For centuries, the annals of history have been filled with the tales of legendary heroes from distant lands, while the courageous stories of Africa's own champions have often remained hidden in the shadows. Yet the continent's rich tapestry is interwoven with threads of their resilience, strength, and triumph, waiting to be unearthed and celebrated. From ancient kingdoms to modern-day movements, Africa's unsung heroes have shaped the course of human history, leaving lasting impacts on the world. In this video of immense interest, we celebrate our African heroes, their stories of struggle, sacrifice, and victory, which serves as testaments to the power of the human spirit. By making an example of 10 out of a whole, plenty of them out there. Before we proceed, kindly support our works by hitting the thumb button, share content with friends and families to keep spreading our eye-opening Black narrative, and also consider subscribing to stay with us for more revealing contents. Without further ado, let us dive in. Number 10, Amilcar Cabral. Amilcar Cabral was a remarkable personality whose history is profoundly worthy of remembrance. He was far more than just a freedom fighter. He was a strategic mastermind behind the liberation movements in Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde. Born on September 12, 1924, to Cape Verdean parents, Amilcar Cabral was a trained agronomist who took up arms not just in a physical sense, but ideologically. He was, in fact, a leading African thinker of the 20th century. His writings on liberation and independence influenced not just the Portuguese colonies, but also sparked dialogues across Africa. While in his university days at Lisbon, Cabral helped found the Centro de Estudos Africanos, an association of Lusophone African students that included future Angolan President Agostinho Neto. Cabral and some of his fellow African students would go ahead to develop political theories regarding colonialism and liberation. After graduating in 1950, Cabral was employed by the Portuguese colonial authorities as an agronomist. He would travel widely in Portuguese Guinea in order to conduct a survey of the land and its resources, which provided him with the opportunity to interact with people from various cultures who lived in the colony. During that time, Cabral had also continued to contemplate national liberation for colonies in Africa. In September 1956, he and 5 associates, including a brother Luis and Aristides Pereira, formed the African Party for the Independence of Guinea and Cape Verde, which effectively fought against Portuguese rule. And in December of that year, he co-founded a liberation movement in Angola with Neto. The man was irrepressibly passionate, with the singular goal of liberating his people, rapidly emerging as the leader of the PAIGC. The group organized early political resistance to colonial power in the form of workers' strikes, calling for better wages and improved conditions. However, the Pijiguiti mass, killing in August 1959, when the Portuguese fired on demonstrators during a dock workers' strike, demonstrated to the PAIGC that a different approach was required. Resistance activity was subsequently shifted to the countryside and was altered to make use of guerrilla-style tactics. Beginning in 1963, Cabral took his party into an open war for the independence of Portuguese Guinea, and in the late 1960s, Cabral was the de facto ruler of the parts of Portuguese Guinea not occupied by army units from Portugal. In 1972, he established the Guinean People's National Assembly as a step toward independence. However, tragically, in January 1973, Cabral was shot outside his home in Conakry, in neighboring independent Guinea, where his party had established its headquarters. He was killed by Inocencio Cani, a disgruntled PAIGC guerrilla war veteran who was believed to have been working with Portuguese agents. In September of that year, the PAIGC unilaterally declared Guinea-Bissau's independence, a status formally achieved on September 10, 1974, with Cabral's brother Luis as the new country's first president. Cabral's efforts in the guerrilla war against the Portuguese military were matched by his contributions to the literature of national liberation. Cabral's main contribution was his study of colonized identity and leadership in the context of national liberation, class consciousness, and Marxian theory. For Cabral, culture was key to national liberation. He articulated a process of re-Africanization by which Africa's elite, long beholden to the colonizers for their education and employment, would re-embrace indigenous African culture and reintegrate themselves into mass popular culture. Amilcar Cabral may have been assassinated before he could witness the independence of his homeland, which he fought all his life for, but his theories on colonialism and independence continues to be studied today. Number 9, Ezana, King of the Axum Kingdom. King Ezana was one of the most well-known kings to rule Axum, a wealthy kingdom in African history. The kingdom of Axum was in present-day Ethiopia. Ezana ruled the kingdom of Axum, Yemen, Eritrea, and Sudan. He was born into a royal family in 325 AD and succeeded his father, King Ella Amida, also known as Usanas. After his father's death, he became king even though he was still a child. Although Ethiopian history was not well documented before the 12th century, the reign of Ezana of Axum is surprisingly well documented. As a young king growing into adulthood, Ezana's father's counselors tutored him. During his reign between 330 AD to 356 AD, Ezana of Axum planned and fought many battles. He expanded the borders of his land to include parts of Sudan and Somalia. He also encouraged trade with Greek merchants who came to Axum, where they traded in gold, shells, spices, and ivory. He did this to win power over land, including the kingdom of Meroe. Under King Ezana's rule, literature flourished as well. The Ge'ez language became independent of Sabaean and was used more often in writing than before. Through strategic battles, Ezana of Axum conquered many lands, but it is what he did after this that showed his kindness as a king. Instead of oppressing or enslaving the people from these conquered lands, he wanted them to become wealthy and prosper. To do this, he moved them to fertile land where they could peacefully live their lives, making money off the land. During this time, this was unheard of, as many kings would enslave people and make money off them. He showed his kindness, concern, and responsibility for his people in all aspects of his reign, including coins. On coins uncovered in the late 1990s at archaeological sites in India, the Greek phrase, toi tu apech dextupie, can be seen. In English, this means, may this please the person. Christianity was also introduced during reign, which resulted in Ethiopia becoming one of the oldest Christian kingdoms in the world. As a king in the 4th century, Ezana of Axum showed kindness, which was rare for that period. He treated people as people, and did not only see them as a way to increase his wealth. He understood his responsibility as king was to properly, and to allow all his people to do the same. Anyone who came under the ruling of Ezana of Axum was treated with equal opportunity and respect. Number 8, Hatshepsut, Pharaoh of the 18th dynasty of Egypt. Hatshepsut, one of ancient Egypt's most successful pharaohs, defied convention and left an indelible mark on history. Born around 1508 BCE in Thebes, Egypt, she was the daughter of Thutmose I and a secondary wife, Ahmose. After her father's death, she married her half-brother Thutmose II, who became pharaoh. When Thutmose II died unexpectedly, Hatshepsut's stepson, Thutmose III, was just a child, and she seized the opportunity to become regent. In a bold move, Hatshepsut took on full pharaonic powers, adopting masculine symbols and titles, including the cat headcloth and the traditional false beard. This challenged Egyptian societal norms and paved the way for future female leaders. During her reign from 1479 to 1458 BCE, Hatshepsut led Egypt to unprecedented prosperity. She established trade relationships with neighboring countries, expanding Egypt's wealth and influence. Her architectural innovations, including her magnificent temple at Deir el-Bahri, remain among Egypt's most impressive achievements. Hatshepsut also led successful military campaigns to Nubia and Syria, securing Egypt's borders and reinforcing its dominance. She promoted the arts, religion, and education, ensuring Egypt's cultural heritage flourished. Despite her impressive accomplishments, Hatshepsut's legacy was nearly lost to history. Thutmose III, who eventually succeeded her, attempted to erase her from Egyptian records, destroying many of her monuments and inscriptions. However, in the 19th century, archaeologists rediscovered Hatshepsut's story, restoring her legacy. Today, she stands as an iconic African hero, inspiring generations with her resilience, strategic thinking, and leadership. Hatshepsut's life serves as a testament to the power and ingenuity of African leaders, challenging stereotypes and shedding light on the continent's rich history. Her untold story has finally been uncovered, revealing a woman who dared to defy convention and shape the course of human civilization. Hatshepsut was a woman who knew what she wanted, and she was not afraid to go after it. She was the first female pharaoh in Egypt who reigned in her right from 1473 to 58 BCE. The story goes that she acted as a regent queen for her stepson, Thutmose III, who was too young to rule on his own at the time, in the first few years. Hatshepsut complied and was an entirely conventional regent. However, by the end of his regnal year, she had been crowned as king. Hatshepsut and Thutmose III agreed and were co-rulers of Egypt, but Hatshepsut was the dominant king. Despite her controversial grab for power, her reign was significant with peace and prosperity. She took on ambitious building projects, the greatest being the temple at Deir el-Bahari. Now to the next. Number 7. Aline Sitoe Diatta. Aline Sitoe Diatta is an icon in Senegal, a woman who has been compared to Joan of Arc for her resistance efforts against French colonialists. Born around the early 1920s, Aline grew up witnessing the exploitation and suffering of her people under Portuguese rule. As a member of the Manjaco ethnic group, Aline was deeply rooted in her community's traditions and culture. She became aware of the injustices inflicted upon her people, including forced labor, land expropriation, and cultural suppression. In 1955, Aline's village was plagued by famine, and the Portuguese colonial authorities refused to provide aid. Driven by desperation and determination, Aline rallied her community to organize a peaceful protest. The demonstration, led by Aline, marched to the colonial administrator's office, demanding relief and justice. The Portuguese responded with brutal force, arresting and torturing Aline and other protest leaders. Undeterred, Aline continued to mobilize her people, using her knowledge of traditional medicine and cultural practices to empower and unite them. Aline's defiance sparked a wider movement, inspiring the formation of the African Party for the Independence of Guinea and Cape Verde, led by Amilcar Cabral. She became a key figure in the struggle for independence, coordinating clandestine meetings, spreading propaganda, and recruiting fighters. Arrested multiple times, Aline endured imprisonment, torture, and forced labor, yet she remained steadfast, inspiring fellow prisoners and continuing to organize resistance within the colonial prison system. Aline's courage and resilience ultimately led to her exile to the Cape Verde Islands, where she remained under harsh imprisonment conditions until her tragic death on May 22, 1944, at the tender age of 24. Her life was cut short, but her legacy endured, inspiring generations to come. Aline Sitoe Diatta's untold story embodies the spirit of African resistance and heroism. Her bravery inspired a generation of freedom fighters, challenging colonial authority and oppression, preserving cultural heritage, and demonstrating the power of grassroots organizing. Today, Aline Sitoe Diatta stands as an iconic African hero, her name etched in the annals of history, alongside other courageous leaders who fought for freedom and self-determination. Even after her death, Aline's story has continued to inspire Senegalese women and men alike. Her resilience against overwhelming odds has made her a legendary figure in the annals of African history. In Guinea-Bissau, Aline's legacy lives on, inspiring ongoing struggles for social justice and human rights. Her story serves as a testament to the enduring power of African resilience and the unwavering determination of women leaders in shaping the continent's history. Number 6. Ahmed Sekou Toure. In the tumultuous years following World War II, Africa was ablaze with nationalist fervor. Among the courageous leaders who emerged to shape the continent's destiny was Ahmed Sekou Toure, a visionary statesman from Guinea. Ahmed Sekou Toure was the cornerstone of Guinea's path to independence from France. He was instrumental in his country's decision to break away from the French colonial empire, a move that was a catalyst for other African nations seeking independence. Born on January 9, 1922 in Pharaoh, Guinea, Sekou Toure was raised in a humble farming family. His early life was marked by hardship and struggle, but he found solace in education and politics. Sekou Toure's activism began in his teenage years as he joined Guinea's trade union movement, advocating for workers' rights and independence from French colonial rule. Sekou Toure's charisma and oratory skills quickly propelled him to prominence. In 1946, he co-founded the Democratic Party of Guinea, PDG, which became the leading force in Guinea's struggle for independence. His unwavering commitment to Pan-Africanism and socialism earned him recognition and admiration across the continent. On September 28, 1952, Guinea held a referendum on independence. Sekou Toure, then just 36 years old, led the Yes campaign, urging Guineans to reject French colonial rule. The outcome was decisive, with an overwhelming majority voting for independence. When Guinea declared independence on October 2, 1958, Sekou Toure became the country's first president. His vision for a united, self-sufficient Africa drove his policies. Under his leadership, Guinea forged its own path, nationalizing key industries and promoting African culture and education. Sekou Toure's unwavering stance against neocolonialism and imperialism earned him enemies. He survived numerous assassination attempts and coup plots, including a failed invasion by French-backed mercenaries in 1970. Despite facing immense challenges, Sekou Toure remained committed to his ideals. He played a pivotal role in shaping African unity, hosting historic summits, and advocating for regional cooperation. Sekou Toure's legacy extends beyond Guinea's borders. He inspired generations of African leaders, leaving an indelible mark on the continent's struggle for freedom and self-determination. On March 26, 1984, Sekou Toure passed away in Cleveland, Ohio, while undergoing medical treatment. His funeral in Conakry, Guinea, drew millions, a testament to his enduring impact. Number 5. Charlotte Maxeke. Charlotte Maxeke was a trailblazer in many respects, not least of which was her becoming the first black South African woman to earn a college degree. Early on, she recognized the oppressive nature of apartheid and committed her life to dismantling it. Born on April 7, 1874 in Polokwane, South Africa, Charlotte was raised in a family of modest means. Her early life was marked by hardship, but her determination and intellect earned her a scholarship to study music in the United States. At the African Methodist Episcopal Church's Wilberforce University in Ohio, Charlotte discovered her true calling fighting for social justice. She returned to South Africa in 1901, armed with a newfound sense of purpose. Charlotte's activism began in the church, where she advocated for women's rights and education. She soon expanded her scope, joining the African National Congress, ANC, and becoming a key figure in the anti-pass law movement. In 1918, Charlotte co-founded the Bantu Women's League, the first black women's organization in South Africa. Through this platform, she mobilized women against colonial oppression, land dispossession, and forced labor. Charlotte's unwavering commitment to justice drew attention from both allies and adversaries. She faced ridicule, harassment, and even arrest, but remained steadfast. During the 1920s, Charlotte traveled extensively, rallying international support for South Africa's liberation struggle. Her powerful oratory skills and persuasive writing earned her recognition as a leading voice for African liberation. Charlotte's legacy extends beyond her own lifetime. She inspired generations of women leaders, including Winnie Madikizela Mandela and Albertina Sisulu. On October 16, 1939, Charlotte Maxeke passed away, leaving behind a testament to her unwavering dedication. Number 4. Dedan Kimathi. Dedan Kimathi was a rebel field marshal fighting the British colonial authorities in Kenya during the Mau Mau Rebellion of the 1950s. The violent rebellion remains a controversial part of Kenyan and British history. The rebellion instigated the creation of a system of detention camps, which saw the incarceration of some 80,000 Kikuyu people in Kenya. Kimathi was born at Kanyinya in the Nyeri district of Central Province. In 1941, he was enlisted as a sweeper with the King's African Rifles, KAR, only to desert the role soon after learning of the terrible conditions African soldiers were subjected to. After a short stint working as an untrained teacher, between 1947 and 1949, Kimathi joined the Kenya African Union, KAU, the first national political party in Kenya, and served as a secretary for the Old Kalu branch. From working in this branch, Kimathi became involved with the Mahimu Committee, who played a central role in transforming and spreading the practice of oathing within the Mau Mau movement. Kimathi rose to prominence within the movement in the early 1950s, first acting as an oath administrator, a method of initiation, and a way of ensuring loyalty within the Mau Mau movement. He quickly became a leader of the Mau Mau fighters who migrated into the forest to fight the British forces after the declaration of the state of emergency in late 1952. After a relentless campaign to capture Kimathi and his insurgents, the British colonial government's tribal police captured him alone early on October 21, 1956, in the emergency trenches dug to separate the native reserve and the Nyandarua forest. The nature of Kimathi's arrest is still contested, yet the recorded version of events is that Dedan Kimathi was shot and captured by tribal police constable Ndirangu Mau, who claimed that he shot Kimathi in the leg as he attempted to re-enter the forest and evade capture. Kimathi's capture was a momentous victory for the British, who saw him as the focal point of the uprising, without which the forest fighters could not function. After a laborious and intricate trial, on November 19, 1956, Chief Justice Kenneth O'Connor found Kimathi guilty of unlawful possession of a firearm and ammunition, actions made illegal by the emergency regulations put in place by the British government in an attempt to quell the violence of the rebellion. On that same day, the Supreme Court of Kenya at Nyeri, the colonial government sentenced Kimathi to death. In the early hours of 18th February 1957, Kimathi was hanged to death at Kamiti Prison and, according to documentation, buried within its grounds. The exact location of his grave has never been found. The British government's decision to execute Kimathi for such a minor charge was fueled by their desperation to eradicate the Mau Mau rebellion. Since Kimathi was such a fervent, famous anti-colonialist, his death could stand as a warning. To this day, Kimathi remains an icon of the Mau Mau rebellion. Number 3, Lillian Ngoyi. Lillian Masediba Matabane Ngoyi was a passionate anti-apartheid and women's rights advocate, and one of the most prominent women leaders during the 1950s. Born in Pretoria in 1911, she attended primary school through Standard 6 and trained as a nurse for 3 years before becoming a seamstress. In 1945, Ngoyi began working in a garment factory and joined the Garment Workers Union of the Transvaal. Her union activism led her to take part in the defiance campaign against apartheid laws. Ngoyi's arrest in 1952 for standing in the whites-only line at the post office in Pretoria changed the course of her life. From this time onward, while still struggling to support her family, she devoted herself to anti-apartheid activism. A passionate speaker, she was elected to the top positions in the Federation of South African Women and the African National Congress Women's League, and became the first woman elected to the ANC Executive Committee. In 1954, as a delegate to the World Congress of Mothers, she traveled widely in Europe, China, and the Soviet Union. Upon returning to South Africa, Ngoyi was a key leader of the historic demonstrations against passes for women in 1955 and 1956. But her political prominence also made her a target of state repression. First arrested in the treason trial in 1956, she was among the anti-apartheid leaders detained after the Sharpeville mass unaliving of 1960. Between trial appearances and imprisonment, she continued her political activities. Ngoyi co-led one of the most massive anti-pass protests in South African history, which resulted in her arrest and lifetime ban from public gatherings. Her activism was a testimony to her resilience and belief in gender and racial equality. In the last 2 decades of her life, she suffered from a series of banning orders that restricted her to her Soweto home. Number 2, Amanirenas, Queen of the Kush Kingdom. Queen Amanirenas was an amazing warrior queen. She was the ruler of Kush, a kingdom in modern-day Sudan from 40 BC to 10 BC, after the death of her husband of the Emperor of Kush, Taharqal, a powerful black Pharaoh of the kingdom. While she was a queen, she led her armies against the Roman Empire in a war that lasted 5 years, from 25 BCE to 21 BCE. She was able to do what other male rulers were unable to. She prevented the Roman invasion of her kingdom. As a renowned queen of the kingdom of Kush, Amanirenas is celebrated for her exceptional political acumen and military prowess. Notably, she led the Kushite armies against the Romans from 27 BC to 22 BC, following the defeat of Cleopatra and Mark Antony in the Battle of Actium. What makes Amanirenas truly remarkable is the ultimate sacrifice she made for her kingdom during the battle. In a demonstration of unwavering dedication, she lost an eye in combat, exemplifying her unyielding commitment to her people and land. The governor of Rome, Gaius Petronius, referred to her as One-Eye Candens, Candeke. During her regime, Amanuensis ordered several brutal tactics against the Romans, such as feeding her captives to her pet lions based on the found carvings. Legends have it that during the war, a Kushite ambassador sent the Romans a message from the queen. They gave them a bundle of golden arrows and said, "This gift is from Candens. If you want peace, this is a token of warmth and friendship. If you want war, keep them because you will need them." Towards the end of the battle, the Nubians and Romans reached an agreement and treaty that favored the Nubians. The treaty forced the Romans out of the Kush territory and freed the Nubians from paying taxes to the Romans. Princess Amanirenas' political leadership marked a victory and began a period of peace and prosperity. Barwa, South Africa, also became the lighthouse of Africa, for 300 years after the princess's victory. When she died in 10 BC, the Barwas honored her with the title of Kandak and the most powerful African woman in history. They honored her for her courage, military advancement, and for bringing peace and prosperity to South Africa. Number 1. Augustine of Hippo. He was the Bishop of Hippo from 396 to 430, one of the Latin fathers of the Church, and perhaps the most significant Christian thinker after St. Paul. Augustine's adaptation of classical thought to Christian teaching created a theological system of great power and lasting influence. He is a saint of the Catholic Church, and his authority in theological matters was universally accepted in the Latin Middle Ages and remained in the Western Christian tradition, virtually uncontested till the 19th century. St. Augustine's ideas had a profound impact on Western culture. His views on right and wrong, God's forgiveness, free will, and human relationships were revolutionary, yet highly controversial. They challenged the traditional thinking of his time and continue to spark debates today. Augustine's thoughts were vastly different from the prevailing philosophical and cultural norms. As a result, he faced intense criticism during his lifetime, and his ideas remain contested in modern times. Despite this, his influence on Western thought remains unparalleled, shaping discussions around ethics, morality, and human nature. Philosophers continue to be fascinated by Augustine's groundbreaking ideas on language and its meaning, doubt and certainty, human choice and emotions, free will and destiny, and the workings of the human mind. What's remarkable is how Augustine approached philosophy, balancing faith with open-minded inquiry. Despite being rooted in biblical truth, his approach was surprisingly flexible and open to exploration. His most famous work, the Confessiones, is unique in the ancient literary tradition, but greatly influenced the modern tradition of autobiography. It is an intriguing piece of philosophy from a first-person perspective. Because of his importance for the philosophical tradition of the Middle Ages, he is often listed as the first medieval philosopher. Although Emperor Constantine I had ended anti-Christian persecutions decades before Augustine's birth, Augustine later witnessed the anti-pagan and anti-heretic laws of 2780, Theodosius I and his sons, which effectively established Catholic Christianity as the Roman Empire's official religion. Augustine's world was far from medieval and monolithically Christian. In Augustine's congregation, pagan religious, cultural, and social customs persisted, much to his dismay, as reflected in his sermons. Throughout his work, he engages with pre- and non-Christian philosophy, much of which he knew from firsthand. Platonism in particular remained a decisive ingredient of his thought. He is therefore best read as a Christian philosopher of late antiquity, shaped by and in constant dialogue with the classical tradition. Translations from Greek or Latin texts in this entry are by the author, unless otherwise stated. Biblical quotations are also translated from Augustine's Latin version. His numerous written works shape the practice of biblical exegesis and help lay the foundation for much of medieval and modern Christian thought. In Roman Catholicism, he is formally recognized as a doctor of the Church. Today, the stories of Africa's unsung heroes serve as a testament to the continent's rich history, resilience, and contributions to the global narrative. Their stories offer us more than just history. They give us lessons in courage, resilience, and the unyielding quest for justice. They've shaped the Africa we know today and served as inspirations for all generations to come. Despite centuries of erasure and marginalization, these courageous individuals have left indelible marks on the world. Their legacies continue to inspire generations, reminding us of the power of courage, perseverance, and vision. By uncovering and celebrating these untold stories, we reclaim Africa's rightful place in world history, challenge dominant narratives and stereotypes, empower future leaders and change makers, and foster a deeper understanding of our shared humanity. As we honor these African heroes, we acknowledge the past, embrace the present, and shape a brighter future, one that recognizes the continent's invaluable contributions to human progress. May their stories ignite a flame of pride, curiosity, and action, inspiring a new wave of leaders to rise and continue the legacy of Africa's unsung heroes. This brings us to the end of yet another informative video. Do not fail to support our consistency by hitting the thumb button, share video with friends and families to keep spreading our eye-opening Black narrative, and consider subscribing to stay tuned in with us if you are yet to. We are delighted to have you. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video. Sources.